Manipulation thrives where speed outruns reflection and where emotions outrun judgment. It presents itself in borrowed tones, the urgency of a false emergency, the warmth of counterfeit concern, the flattery that feels like a shortcut to belonging. What makes manipulation so effective is not merely the skill of the manipulator, but the habits of the manipulated, our hunger to be approved of, our fear of exclusion, our discomfort with ambiguity, our fatigue in the face of relentless demands. The Stoics, who studied the mechanics of impression and assent with almost surgical care, would say that manipulation enters through a single door, the moment we grant unexamined assent to an appearance. It is not the pressure itself that compels us, but our reflex to treat that pressure as binding. If we are to resist without becoming cold or cynical, we must learn to pause at that door, to test impressions without hardening the heart, to see clearly without withdrawing from human warmth. Marcus Aurelius gives us the first tool, the discipline of naming. You have power over your mind, not outside events. To resist manipulation, we begin by calling things by their precise names. An email that says urgent without a reason is not urgency, it is costume. A compliment that floats free of evidence is not appreciation, it is bait. A deadline moved forward without explanation is not necessity, it is leverage. Naming replaces the fog that manipulators rely on with the clarity they fear. This is not cynicism, it is accuracy. You can still be kind to the person while refusing the trick. Stoic clarity does not sneer, it simply declines to hallucinate. Next comes Epictetus's sharp distinction between impressions and assent. An impression arrives. Someone implies that you owe them, that you lose your place if you do not comply, that everyone agrees. Your task is not to fight the impression, nor to accept it, but to suspend judgment long enough to examine it. Is this within my control? What happens if I let the feeling pass before acting? The Stoics trained for this in small things so they could stand firm in big ones. A pause of 5 breaths can be the difference between being carried by someone else's story and choosing your own. In that pause, compassion remains possible. You may discover the pressure itself is born of the other's fear, yet your choice remains yours. Seneca warns about the commerce of favors, how debts, real or imagined, become the soft shackles by which we are led. Manipulation often takes the shape of moral bookkeeping done in bad faith. After all I've done for you becomes a lever designed to move what should not be moved. The Stoic answer is to clean your own ledger. Give freely or do not give, but if you give, do it as a complete act, not as a seed of future control. And when someone presents a bill you never agreed to, decline it without rancor. You can say, I'm grateful for what you chose to do. I didn't agree to the obligation you're describing. This protects both your freedom and your warmth. You honor their action without renting your will. One of manipulation's favorite tools is urgency. Decide now. Offer ends today. If you really cared, you'd answer immediately. Marcus counters with a royal prerogative anyone can claim, the right to set your own tempo. The Stoic is slow to anger, slow to panic, slow to promise. Not because life requires slowness, but because clarity does. You can be swift when necessity is real. Flood, harm, but you are never hurried by someone else's timetable masquerading as fate. To remain human in this, keep the door open. I want to give this the care it deserves. I'll respond after I've looked properly. Firmness paired with respect drains urgency of its poison and leaves only what is actually urgent. Flattery is the twin of urgency. It does not push, it pulls. It whispers that you are special, chosen, part of a circle. Epictetus's remedy is humiliation in the best sense, the practice of returning to the ordinary. Weep your floor, carry your own bag, seek correction from those who do not need you. When you are at ease with unimportance, flattery loses its hook. You can accept genuine praise without intoxication and decline manipulation disguised as admiration without contempt. Warmth remains because you do not despise the praiser, you simply don't rent your judgment to their words. Another trap is manufactured confusion. Manipulators flood the field with jargon, contradictions, and shifting goalposts so that you surrender orientation and follow the only confident voice. The Stoic response is to simplify to the bone. State the claim in plain language. Ask for terms to be defined. Write what was said and what was agreed, so that memory cannot be edited by pressure. Seneca's letters are models of such plainness, short, clear, grounded in first principles. You can be gentle and relentless at once. Relentless about clarity, gentle about ego. Help me understand, said without sarcasm, and followed by specific questions, is compassion in defense of truth. What about manipulation by guilt, the insinuation that boundaries are cruelty? Here, the Stoic holds two truths at once. We owe kindness, we do not owe ourselves. To say no is not to withdraw love. To enforce a boundary is not to declare war. Marcus's image of the rock the waves keep crashing over is useful here. The rock does not hate the waves, it remains itself. When someone calls your boundary cold, you can respond with warmth of tone and firmness of content. I care about you, I'm not able to do that. The first clause protects the human bond, the second protects your agency. Compassion without compliance is not hypocrisy, it is adulthood. Cynicism often masquerades as wisdom after a person has been burned. The Stoic refuses that counterfeit maturity. To become cynical is to let the manipulator win twice, once by extracting the action and again by darkening your view of people. The alternative is calibrated trust. You extend goodwill in proportion to evidence. You keep your promises precisely and notice who keeps theirs. You forgive, but you do not reset the ledger to naivete. You revise expectations and proceed. This is not suspicion, it is stewardship. Your kindness remains open-handed. Your commitments remain measured. Soft eyes, hard edges, as a modern paraphrase might put it. There is a cosmopolitan dimension to all this. Stoic ethics insists that every person is kin in the widest circle of concern. That means you do not demonize even the manipulator. You search for the fear driving the tactic. Perhaps it is scarcity. Perhaps it is learned behavior from a harsher room. Understanding does not mean enabling. It means you can say no without hatred, correct without humiliation, and walk away without the acid of contempt. You refuse to become what you oppose. In practical terms, you document, you decide, you depart if necessary, and you keep your capacity for tenderness intact for the next person who deserves it. Finally, there is the internal audit, the evening practice. Marcus, Seneca, and Epictetus all commend in different ways. Where today did I assent too quickly? Where did I confuse kindness with compliance? Where did I let someone else's urgency set my mind on fire? And the inverse, where did I hold a boundary with warmth? Where did clarity prevent harm? Where did I see through the tactic and still see the person? This review does not scold, it calibrates. You end the day a shade less gullible and not a shade colder. That is the Stoic goal, a mind that cannot be moved by tricks and a heart that still moves toward the good. We resist manipulation not by armoring ourselves against humanity, but by training the faculty that grants or withholds assent. We keep the door of the heart open and the gate of judgment guarded. We speak plainly, move deliberately, repay favors cleanly, and hold boundaries without drama. We understand enough of fear to forgive, enough of nature to decline, enough of ourselves to remain warm. In such a posture, manipulation finds few handles to grip, and cynicism finds no empty room to rent. Manipulation rarely begins with a demand, it begins with a mood. Before the explicit ask, there is the quiet pressure of tempo, the implied debt of a favor, the fog of needless complexity, the narrowing of your social field until one voice fills the room. If you wait for the blatant moment, sign here, do this now, prove you care. You have already surrendered ground. The Stoic trains for an earlier frontier, the first alterations in weather. Marcus Aurelius would say, strip things to their essentials. So we strip the tactic of its costume and learn to feel it at the threshold when a shift in pace, posture, or pronoun heralds the attempt to steer your will. Time pressure is the most common weather pattern. It announces itself as benevolent haste. I don't want to waste your time, and then accelerates until your judgment trips over its own feet. The antidote is sovereignty over tempo. The Stoic rehearses small phrases that buy back minutes without bruising the bond. I'll give this the attention it deserves and get back to you. I don't make decisions on first pass. After lunch, I'll have a clearer head. These are not evasions. They are boundary conditions for clear consent. You pair them with a bodily cue, a deliberate breath, the uncrossing of legs, the laying down of the pen, so that your nervous system believes your words. When urgency is real, speed will still come. When urgency is theater, the curtain drops as soon as you refuse the tempo. The second early signal is emotional debt, the subtle frame that you owe because someone gave, noticed, included, vouched. Seneca cautions that gifts become chains when we let the giver define their weight. The Stoic keeps a clean ledger by giving as a completed act, no IOU tucked inside generosity, and by receiving with gratitude minus obligation. When the bill appears, after all we've done for you, you answer with warmth and precision, gratitude for the past, clarity about the present, no purchase order signed by your conscience. You can say, I appreciated that, I didn't agree to this, in a tone that honors humanity while protecting agency. Much manipulation collapses when the hidden invoice is refused gently but unmistakably. Confusion is a third front. A manipulator thrives in a fog of acronyms, shifting definitions, and moving targets, because fog shortens sight and makes the nearest confident voice look like a lighthouse. The Stoic introduces sunlight. Reduce the claim to plain speech and write it down. Ask, what exactly are we deciding? And pause until nouns replace adjectives. Summarize agreements in an email so memory cannot be edited by pressure. This is not pedantry, it is mercy for everyone's future, including your own. Clarity is a kindness that also happens to be armor. Isolation is the fourth sign, the tactic that tries to separate you from counsel. Don't bring others into this. Let's keep it between us. No need to loop legal. The Stoic resists the narrowing of the circle that makes consent brittle. Ask for daylight. I'd like a second set of eyes. Our process roots this through review. I run decisions like this past my partner. You are not accusing, you are normalizing transparency. If transparency itself becomes objectionable, the attempt has announced its nature and saved you weeks of repair. These early signs are countered not by cynicism, but by micro habits that keep judgment online while the heart stays open. The first habit is naming. As impressions arrive, you call them what they are: flattery, pressure, ambiguity, debt. Naming cools the reaction without freezing compassion. You can still like the person while refusing the frame. The second habit is breathing with numbers. 5 slow inhales and exhales create the time your prefrontal cortex needs to return to the conversation. Reason without oxygen is rhetoric. Reason with oxygen is choice. A third habit is the small table test. Reduce the decision to a few elemental questions you keep ready for days like this. Is this in my control? What are the reversible steps? What is the worst plausible outcome if I wait one night? Would I advise a friend to accept these terms? The point is not to intellectualize every encounter, it is to prevent the trance of momentum from substituting for consent. You can hold someone's gaze kindly while you run the test silently, and the kindness is not diminished by the test, it is made safer. Fourth, practice calibrated transparency. Instead of arguing with the salesperson or the colleague whose deadline ate your weekend, reveal your process. Here's how I decide. I sleep on it. I check the numbers with X. and I say yes or no tomorrow at noon. You have shown respect for the relationship and respect for the standard. Manipulation relies on hidden levers. Standards drag the mechanism into view. When standards are public, good actors feel relieved and bad actors feel thwarted. Either way, you'll learn something true. Fifth, rehearse refusal before you need it, the way pilots rehearse checklists. A set of honest, repeatable no sentences keeps warmth intact. I'm not available for that, but I wish you well finding someone who is. I care about you, I won't do this. This doesn't match my priorities. If that changes, I'll reach out. The nervous system hates improvising refusal under spotlight. Give it a script that is already proven it can be spoken without guilt. You are not arming yourself against love, you are equipping love to survive manipulation. There is also the habit of document once, decide once. After a confusing meeting or a charge request, write the facts while they are fresh and store them where future. You can retrieve them. In moments of pressure, memory is pliable. Documentation is your ally against your own wishful recollection. The most humane people are often the easiest to retrain by revisionist history. We agreed, you promised, because they dislike conflict. A brief, calm record reduces future disputes and lowers the emotional cost of saying, that's not what we agreed. A Stoic micro-practice that rarely gets mentioned is deliberate ordinariness. Epictetus advised his students to accept being thought foolish. Choose tasks that bring you back to scale. Washing dishes, taking the bus, sweeping your doorway. Flattery is less effective on a person practiced in ordinariness. So is shaming. You have rehearsed being nobody, so social heat has fewer places to burn. This ordinariness is not self-belittlement, it is calibration. It keeps your worth grounded in being, not in being seen. What if the manipulator is someone you love, family, partner, old friend? The fear is that boundaries will freeze affection. Stoic practice splits the atom. You separate tone from content. You let your voice carry warmth while your words carry the no. You replace accusations with descriptions. When dates move last minute, I feel rushed and say yes to things I later regret. I'm changing that. You do not litigate motives or replay archives. You state the new policy of your life and live it. Over time, honest people adapt. Controlling people escalate and self-identify. Either outcome clarifies the path, and clarity is the birthplace of mercy. Cynicism presents itself as the safer road after you've seen these games. It is not safer, it is stickier. The Stoic alternative is confident goodwill. You presume decency until evidence accumulates otherwise, and you revise calmly when it does. You do not give one more chance. As a superstition, you set observable criteria for trust and watch. Compassion remains not as a leak in your boundary, but as your default stance toward the human condition. People are confused, rushed, frightened. You include yourself in that description and keep your heart soft while your edges stay firm. At day's end, the evening audit ties the practice together. Not a tribunal, an instrument calibration. Where did I yield to a clock that wasn't real? Where did I accept a debt I did not owe? Where did I make clarity without making an enemy? Where did I hold a boundary and keep a bridge? You praise what worked, so the mind repeats it. You adjust what didn't without calling yourself names. Marcus did this not to become invulnerable, but to become congruent, the same person before pressure, during and after. In the end, early resistance to manipulation is not a posture of suspicion, it is a posture of presence. You slow the room without scolding. You translate without shaming. You protect your ledger without turning love into a transaction. You refuse the theater of urgency and answer the reality underneath it. You keep reaching for the person even as you decline the tactic, and because you train in the small weather emails, asks, passing conversations, you arrive at the storms with a practiced steadiness that needs neither armor nor ice. The heart remains open, the gate of assent remains guarded. That is the Stoic promise: clarity with compassion, warmth with will. Manipulation is protean. The Stoic does not memorize 1,000 costumes, he trains a few stable responses and lets them scale. Clarity before speed. Warm tone, firm edges. Translate claims into plain speech. Keep your own tempo. Record agreements. Decline invisible debts. And, crucially, keep seeing the person across from you as a person, even when you must refuse their tactic. What follows are 4 common arenas. With dialogues you can adapt without sacrificing either your boundaries or your humanity. At work, manipulation often hides behind collective nouns and compressed timelines. We all agreed. Everyone is on board. The client needs this today. The tactic is to borrow the authority of the group and the clock to bypass your judgment. The Stoic answer is to ask for particulars without heat. Imagine a project manager leaning into your doorway. We've got to ship by Friday. Everyone said yes in the stand-up. You keep your chair still, your breath even. Which scope did we lock? What risks did we accept? I'll give you a realistic Friday if we list them. If they press, don't overcomplicate, just make it happen. You give the work what Marcus gave himself, a pace that belongs to reason. I won't promise fiction. Here's what's true, with 2 fewer features. Friday is solid, full scope needs Tuesday. I'll send the written plan in 20 minutes. Your tone is clean, not combative. You are not accusing them of manipulation. You are making manipulation unprofitable by replacing fog with facts and speed with sequencing. Sometimes the leverage is for altruism. Could you just take this on? You're the only one I can count on. Flattery plus guilt. Your reply honors the human and rejects the hook. Thanks for trusting me. I'm at capacity. If it must be me, we'll pause X or push Y. Which do you prefer? The move here is choice architecture. You return the decision to the requester's court where it belongs. If they escalate, I thought you were a team player. You stay with descriptions, not labels. Being a team player includes protecting commitments we've already made. I'll help decide which commitment moves. You refuse the emotional invoice and still offer a path forward. When the arena is intimate, a partner, a parent, a friend, the currency is belonging. Manipulation arrives dressed as concern or history. If you really cared, you'd come now. After all I've done, you can't say no. The Stoic splits warmth from compliance. Picture a late-night text. I need you to drive over. I can't believe you won't. You call, not to be dragged into a thread. You want voice, tone, breath. I love you. I'm not driving tonight. I'm exhausted and it's unsafe. I can call you an Uber, stay on the phone while it arrives, and talk tomorrow when we're rested. You say, I love you, without irony, and I'm not, without apology. If they retort, so your sleep matters more than me. You keep the person in view while rejecting the frame. You matter to me. Tonight, I'm choosing safety for both of us. I'll be here in the morning. The point is not to win the moment. It is to keep the relationship healthy by refusing to fund it with self-betrayal. Family debt is trickier because it has archives. We paid for your school. We covered your rent. We raised you, didn't we? The ledger is real. The leverage is illegitimate. Seneca's counsel helps. Gratitude is noble. Servitude is not. A parent says, you owe us this move across town. You answer with respect and a boundary, spoken slowly. I'm grateful for what you chose to do for me. I won't move. I can visit every Sunday and help with appointments. That's what I can offer. They may label it cold. You refuse the label and repeat the offer. Over weeks, the new policy becomes the new weather, and love adapts to the climate of truth. In sales and marketing, manipulation loves urgency and exclusivity. Offer ends today, only 5 left, founder's pricing, pre-approved. The Stoic never argues with a pitch, he changes the medium. Phones magnify pressure, text shrinks it, Paper defangs it. The rep says, if you sign now, I can lock this discount. You slow the tempo without contempt. Send the terms. If it's right tomorrow, it's right today. I'll decide after I read. If the rep insists, it's now or never. You let the scarcity test itself. If never is the alternative, I'm okay with never. You do not reward the theater with counter theater. You offer a rule instead of a mood. I don't buy on first contact. Rules make you predictable, and predictability is kryptonite to manipulative tactics. But not all persuasion is manipulation. The Stoic keeps goodwill by stating criteria up front. I say yes when the problem is clear, the ROI is written, and the exit terms are simple. Good actors will meet you there, grateful even for the shared language. Bad actors will push for vagueness. You don't need to diagnose their motives, you only need to notice their behavior and proceed accordingly. Online, manipulation scales by exploiting status games and outrage cycles. If you don't post X, you're complicit. This is the take. Dissent means you hate Y. Don't read, react. An interval, react. The tactic is isolation. Detach you from nuance and herd you into performance. The Stoic refuses performance capture. A friend tags you, say something or else. You DM instead of quote tweeting. I care about this. I won't post on command. If you want my help offline, I'm here. You practice what Marcus practiced, acting in accordance with your nature, not the crowd's appetite. Social platforms also reward bad faith framings, steel manning your view into straw, moving the goalposts mid-thread. You can stay warm by switching from debate to definition. We might be using words differently. When I say X, I mean, and my claim is limited to, if that's not what you're arguing against, we may be talking past each other. If the other party wants war, they will ignore the scaffold. You leave the field without sneer. I'm stepping out. I don't think we're adding light. Your kindness remains visible because you declined to score points. You protected your attention without poisoning the well. In all four arenas, the micro techniques repeat with local accents, plain language, tempo control, written summaries, refusal scripts, calibrated transparency, and the habit of naming what's happening without attacking who's happening. Here are a few dialogue patterns you can carry in your pocket and season to taste. Work, scope drift, happy to help decide trade-offs. Which features move to hit Friday? A, go, work, faux consensus, I wasn't in that agreement. Can you share the notes? Personal, guilt invoice, I'm grateful for what you did. I didn't consent to this obligation. Boundary, I care about you. I'm not doing that. Sales, ticking clock, send the terms. I sleep on financial decisions. Sales, scarcity, if it's truly last call, I'll pass. If not, let's talk tomorrow. Social, performative demands, I won't post to meet a deadline. I'm doing Z offline. Social, fog, define your claim in one sentence and I'll answer that. Notice that none of these require contempt. Contempt is manipulation's favorite sequel. It keeps you online as a combatant long after the battle is unwinnable. The Stoic replacement is description. Describe your process. Describe the constraint. Describe the offer. Describe the no. Description cools heat while preserving connection. There will be cases where power asymmetry is real, and polite phrasing is not enough. A boss who retaliates, a partner who escalates, a seller who misleads, a mob that threatens. Stoic kindness does not forbid stronger measures, it forbids hatred as policy. Escalate through the proper channels. Bring counsel. Exit when staying would cost your integrity or safety. And keep your view of humanity intact by refusing to let the worst actors define the species in your mind. That refusal is not naivete, it is the discipline that keeps you useful to the next good person you'll meet. End each day with a small rehearsal of future conversations. Say the words out loud so your nervous system recognizes them when the moment comes. I won't decide on that timeline. Grateful, still no. Here is what I can do. Write it. I'll read it. We're done for today. Your tone beautiful, your edges honest. The aim is not to win theatrics, it is to remain congruent, the same person before the ask, during the ask, and after the ask. Seneca would call that freedom, Marcus would call it living in agreement with nature, Epictetus would call it guarding your ruling center. You will call it peace that does not become ice. Now some exciting news. Our channel now offers a members club. By joining it, you'll unlock exclusive benefits, deeper content dives, and personal insights. Join us on this journey and let's build a meaningful life together. And I also humbly ask you to leave a comment as it helps my channel immensely. If you do not know what to comment, just write "better every day" so I know you reached this far. And don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. Also, I've linked some books on Stoicism that helped me become the man I am today and will also help you achieve a Stoic mindset. Manipulation is not only a face-to-face event, it is an ecosystem phenomenon. Where haste is rewarded, opacity is tolerated, and favors remain unpriced, manipulation flourishes. The Stoic response is not to live armored against everyone, but to shape the surroundings so that manipulation becomes expensive and clarity becomes cheap. Think of these as social antibodies, processes, agreements, and alliances that protect your judgment without hardening your heart. The first antibody is clarity by default. In work, translate talk into artifacts, decision notes, short written summaries, simple checklists. We aligned becomes we decided X by Y owned by Z. Risks AB, next review on dead on. In families and friendships, the same move can be gentle. To avoid cross wires, I'll text what we just agreed for the weekend. This isn't coldness, it's a gift to the future, yours and theirs. Stoically, it honors reality over recollection, which is where most manipulative revisions try to sneak in. The second antibody is explicit tempo. Manipulators wield invisible clocks. You install visible ones, minimum cooling off periods for financial commitments, a sleep on it rule for big decisions, weekly windows when extraordinary requests are considered. For teams, codify it. Requests outside the cycle enter the next sprint, except true emergencies defined by these criteria. Publish criteria turn urgency into evidence. Evidence is poor fuel for manipulation. A third antibody is normalized consultation. Isolation is a favorite tactic. No need to loop them in. Let's keep this between us. Don't bother legal. You institutionalize the opposite as healthy hygiene. At work, decisions of this class get a second set of eyes. At home, big changes. I always run past my sister partner before I confirm. Transparency becomes a habit, not an accusation. Good actors feel relieved. Bad actors lose their advantage. A fourth is a living covenant for how to ask and how to refuse. In close relationships, you can agree on forms that keep love from turning transactional. Urgent asks include why it's urgent and at least two options. Refusals include a short reason and no character judgments. In teams, maintain a visible trade-off rule. If something comes in, something else moves out. Simple rules create the shared floor where no is civil and yes is conscious. Then, build graceful exits. Manipulation thrives where there is no way out without drama. Design dignified off-ramps, trial periods with scheduled reviews, opt-out clauses without shaming, monthly alignment rituals that allow course corrections before resentment calcifies. With friends, let's test this new routine 3 weeks and revisit without hard feelings. When adjustment is normal, people are less tempted to coerce. Alliances of sobriety are another antibody. Keep 2 or 3 people who don't need your yes and who reliably return you to yourself. They read contracts, listen to charged conversations, and ask the 2 Stoic questions. what's in your control? Which assumption haven't you tested? In organizations, pair leaders as reality partners who review consequential calls with a bias toward first principles. This is an antidote to gaslighting. You outsource not your will, but your calibration. Institutionalize silence. Build pauses into the system. Deals above X require 24 hours. Promotions are discussed across 2 meetings. Meetings end 5 minutes early so decisions aren't rushed at the buzzer. The point isn't slowness for its own sake, it's oxygen for reason. Marcus Aurelius's composure wasn't a personality quirk, it was a tempo. Align metrics with prevention, not performance theater. If the culture celebrates last-minute heroes, manipulators will light fires. If the metric is fires avoided, the stage goes dark. Swap hours talked, for defects reduced, meetings held for decisions that stayed standing. At home, measure fewer promises and more consistency. Seneca's counsel to love what is genuinely useful becomes a dashboard, not a slogan. Adopt a shared language that disarms tricks. Words are operating systems. Use neutral terms: request, proposal, criteria, trade, capacity. When you hear, "If you love me," translate, "I'm hearing a request." What's the proposal? Which criteria make it fair? What comes out to make space? This doesn't dehumanize, it humanizes the content so feelings don't become leverage. Keep brief records, not dossiers. The Stoic documents to align and learn, not to stock a private courtroom. Capture enough to prevent revisionism. Don't curate a museum of grievances. Bitterness is a poor historian and an even poorer strategist. Why do these antibodies work? Because they shift the economics of manipulation. Pushes, fog, and emotional invoices depend on scarcity of time, of light, of exits. When tempo is explicit, when sunlight is routine, when graceful outs exist, the cost of coercion rises while the payoff falls. You are not winning a battle against people. You are designing a room where the game changes. And there is a moral dividend. Systems like these do not only restrain the worst impulses of a few, they dignify the best intentions of the many. The colleague who struggles to say no can point to the rule and keep their promise. The parent who fears being a burden can ask cleanly because there's a shared format. The salesperson who believes in their product can thrive because clarity favors the honest. Stoic ethics is cosmopolitan. It imagines us as kin in widening circles. Antibodies are not fences against others. They are bridges that keep crossings safe. Of course, no structure is foolproof. There will be power asymmetries where politeness fails, rooms where process is a costume, families where history is weaponized. Stoicism doesn't ask you to worship systems. It asks you to remain sovereign while you use them. Document and escalate when it's right. Bring counsel. Exit when staying would cost your integrity or safety. And when you must leave, follow Marcus's advice. Step out without blaming anyone. Not because no one bears fault, but because you won't mortgage your peace to their memory. The final safeguard is your tone. Antibodies can become armor if your voice turns metallic. Keep warmth in how you enforce the structure. I'm going to write this down so we both remember. I won't decide today, and I care enough to decide well. Let's pull in one more set of eyes. You protect the human bond, even as you protect the boundary. That is the Stoic balance, firm on content, gentle on people. End the day with the same calibration we've kept throughout this series. Where did structure spare me from pressure? Where did I hide behind process to avoid a hard kindness? Where did the pause bring light? Where do I need one more ally, one more rule, one more exit? Praise what worked so the mind repeats it. Adjust what didn't without contempt, for yourself or for others. The goal is not a bunker. It is a house with windows you can open and doors you can lock, a place fit for neighbors and fit for sleep. If manipulation enters through unexamined assent, resistance begins before words, before logic, even before intention. It begins in the body. The nervous system is the gatekeeper of consent. When it is spooked, it buys quickly. When it is settled, it inspects the goods. This is why manipulators borrow tempo, volume, and theater, because an accelerated pulse science contracts the mind would not. The Stoic does not pretend to hover above biology, he trains with it. He treats physiology as a forge for character, attention as the guard at the gate, and values as the charter he keeps under the light. When these three work together, breath, gaze, principle, warmth can stay open while consent stays earned. Start with breath, because breath is the steering wheel of state. A single minute of deliberate respiration can lengthen the fuse on any interaction. 5 slow cycles, in through the nose and longer out than in, transform a shove into a nudge. The world will not notice the technique. It will only notice that your eyes don't dart and your voice doesn't rise. That minute is not avoidance, it is preparation, room for judgment to arrive. Marcus Aurelius described composure as a kind of internal citadel. Breath is how you unlock the gate to step inside for a second and look from the walls rather than from the street. Posture matters too. The body remembers old battles and tries to win new ones by flinching early. Shoulders shrink, hands clench, gaze falls, signals of concession that talkers read like maps. Practice the opposite signals without aggression, a long spine, an unlocked jaw, palms relaxed on the table, gaze level and soft. You are not squaring up, you are rooting down. When pressure comes, you will feel the urge to lean forward and explain. Let the urge pass. Lean back a fraction instead. Silence, paired with a calm lean and an unhurried blink, is the sentence your body speaks when your mouth elects to wait. Now attention. The Stoics were technicians of attention before the word metacognition existed. An impression arrives, panic in someone's voice, a velvet compliment, a guilt-laced reminder of favors past. The habit is to fuse with it. This is urgent. This is my chance. This is my duty. Stoic practice inserts a hyphen. This is an impression. Naming creates a little air between the spark and the tinder. This is a claim of urgency. This is flattery without evidence. This is an invoice I did not sign. You do not shame yourself for feeling the tug. You label the tug so it can be inspected. Epictetus would call this guarding the faculty of assent. You are not hardening, you are ventilating. To keep attention from becoming suspicion, you give it a job, translate everything into plain speech. Not, we all know this has to happen, but you are asking me to do X by Y for Z reason. Not, only someone cold would say no, but you're linking my love to this specific action. Translation is an act of mercy. It rescues both parties from the fog where pressure pretends to be truth. And the moment something is clear, your heart can remain soft because you no longer fear being tricked by what you don't understand. Principle is the third leg of inner posture. Without it, calm deteriorates into passivity or convenience. With it, calm becomes a path. Principles are pre-decisions that protect you when your pulse gets loud. They are small, unpoetic rules that keep your life recognizable to you under heat. I sleep on purchases above X. I don't commit on first contact. I do not trade speed for secrecy. I credit by name and by deed. I don't let compliments set deadlines. These are not slogans. They are rails. The more you live on rails you chose, the less anyone else can drive your train. There is a temptation here to turn principles into weapons, sharp edges you wield to punish the world for being messy. The Stoic resists that temptation by pairing every rule with a reason that serves the relationship, not just the self. I'll decide tomorrow so I can give this the thinking it deserves and not rescind under regret. Looping in a second set of eyes so we both trust the decision later. Write it down so memory doesn't force either of us to be the villain. When your rules protect both sides, People feel the care within the boundary and stop mistaking your calm for coldness. Values-based scripts are the practical expression of principle under pressure. A script is not a cliché, it is a well that you dug on a quiet day so you can drink when the heat arrives. I want to treat this seriously. I'll answer at noon tomorrow. I'm grateful for what you chose to do. I didn't agree to the obligation you're naming. I care about you. I'm not doing that. Send the terms. I make decisions from paper, not a call. Notice how each script carries warmth in tone and steel in content. They do not litigate motives because motive trials invite theater. They name the boundary and leave room for dignity to remain in the room. Kindness lives or dies in tone. A cold sentence delivered sweetly still chills people. A firm sentence delivered gently can feel like care. Practice saying no the way you would want the person you love most to say no to you, with an offer of an alternative where you can, with an explanation that reveals your standard without making theirs dirty, with a promise you can keep. I can join the call tonight. I'll read the doc first thing and send notes by 10. You are not rejecting the person. You are protecting the conditions that make your yeses reliable. Empathy, properly held, is not a crack in the wall, it is a light over the table. Ask yourself, what fear is animating this tactic? Embarrassment, the need to be seen. If you can name the fear, you can often feed the human need without paying the manipulative price. I can't decide tonight, but I hear you want certainty. Here's the exact moment you'll have an answer. I won't by now, but I respect the effort. If the offer returns next quarter, reach out to me first. You have addressed the hunger for recognition and stability without renting your will. Make the body an ally to these scripts. Before difficult conversations, reduce your physiological load, a short walk, a glass of water, a few minutes looking at something far away to soften your gaze. During the conversation, let your exhale end with a quiet pause. It signals to your nervous system that you are not in a chase. Afterward, shake something loose, hands, shoulders, a quick stretch, so emotion doesn't ossify into story. Seneca insisted that philosophy should help with daily jolts. This is that help at the cellular level. Then rehearse. Not once, but lightly and often. Say the sentences out loud in a calm room until your mouth recognizes them. Practiced words are a kindness to your future self. They spare you from the stammer that turns a boundary into a brawl. Rehearsal is not pretending life will follow a script. It is preparing your spine to stay friendly while it stays straight when life does not. What a failure. You will rush when you meant to pause. You will pay an invoice you did not owe. You will catch yourself using a rule as a hammer. The evening review, the Stoic's humble mirror, rescues the day from verdicts. 3 questions are enough. Where did my body decide before my mind? Where did clarity protect warmth? Where can I add 1 rail, 1 breath, 1 sentence tomorrow? Praise something you want. Repeat it. Adjust something without insult. Tomorrow, you are not starting over, you are continuing. All of this may sound like self-protection, and it is, but it is also protection of the bond. People can feel the difference between resistance that is fear-driven and resistance that is value-driven. Fear-driven resistance withdraws or attacks. Value-driven resistance remains in relationship while refusing the untruth. The Stoic goal is not indifference. It is benevolence under guidance. You keep the door open for honest persuasion and close it to coercion. You keep listening for what is true and stop renting your judgment to moods. You keep your capacity for tenderness intact, not as a luxury, but as proof that clarity has not cost you your humanity. In this way, inner posture becomes public service. You become the person in the room whose tempo calms everyone else's pulse, whose translation pulls meetings out of fog, whose rules make consent clean, whose no feels like care, and whose yes can be trusted. Manipulation loses its handles, not because you are armored, but because you are ordered. Breath steady, gaze level, values lit. And in that order there is room, not only for your freedom, but for theirs. Most manipulation is ordinary weather, annoying, survivable, instructive. But there are storms, rooms with sharp hierarchies, histories that tilt the floor, incentives that reward pressure and punish pause. A boss who implies your job hangs on a rushed signature. A relative who uses access to children as leverage. A lender whose kindness curdles when you ask for terms in writing. These are not thought experiments. They are the places where theory either becomes posture or becomes practice. The Stoic aim is unchanged. Keep the ruling center free and the heart kind. The tactics tighten, not because we grow harder, but because we refuse to be drafted into someone else's emergency. Start with the honest appraisal that asymmetry is real. Power is not merely a feeling, it is control over consequences. Denying this turns Stoicism into costume. Acknowledging it lets you plan. Marcus Aurelius never pretended the court was level. He cultivated a pace that could not be stolen and a gaze that could not be bought. In our terms, that means you take inventory. What outcomes can this person trigger? What protections already exist? Policies, contracts, allies, documented norms. What costs am I willing to pay to live within my standards? Courage increases when costs are named. Panic feeds on guesses. When pressure rises, language matters more. Words that sounded composed in gentle contexts now need to carry weight without flint. I won't decide on that timeline. I will decide by noon tomorrow. Is not defiance, it is a stamped date. Looping in counsel is my practice on matters of this size. Is not mistrust, it is a policy you live by even with friends. Policies are shields because they are impersonal. The manipulator is invited to argue with a principle instead of your worth. If they persist, the conversation has revealed itself. You can proceed without rehearsing their motives. You can act on the behavior you can see. Documentation stops being a courtesy and becomes a duty to yourself and to anyone after you who might need the record. Write summaries while the heat is fresh. What was asked, what you said, what was agreed, what must happen next. Keep the tone dry. Dryness preserves utility. You are not curating a gallery of wrongs. You are building a map you can hand to a future ally without blushing. Seneca advised keeping accounts of one's days. Here, the account is also a rail against revision, including your own wish to minimize what was uncomfortable in the moment. Allies become decisive. Not a chorus, not a mob. 2 or 3 steady people who have permission to tell you when you are about to pay with your principles. In power-heavy rooms, you bring a second set of eyes as a rule, not an insult. I'll have Alex join us. It helps me keep track, said with a calm face, is both veil and light. Manipulation prefers small, private stages. You enlarge the stage by bringing one more adult into the frame. If someone insists on privacy beyond what the topic requires, they have described the tactic. You do not need to label it to decline it. There will be moments where you must escalate. The Stoic prepares for this without poisoning the well. You learn the process before you need it. Who handles grievances? What evidence is required? What language keeps the focus on standards rather than portraits of villains? This departs from policy in these specific ways, is stronger than this person is unfair. You are not sanitizing harm. You are increasing the chance that your claim survives scrutiny and helps more than just you. Justice pursued this way keeps you from becoming what you oppose, aggressive theater in response to aggressive theater. Exits, when they come, are not failures of resolve. They are acts of self-governance. Marcus writes, "If the smoke makes you cough, I will leave the house, and yet without blaming anyone." That is not passivity. It is clarity about where your lungs end and the room begins. The modern version is a resignation letter that states facts, thanks those who earn thanks, names the standards you refuse to trade, and leaves the archive tidy. You do not set fires on the way out, you take your fire with you. A clean exit often does more for those who remain than a scorched one ever could, because it leaves a pattern that the next person can use without inheriting your battles. Repair is its own discipline. After pressure or after loss, the nervous system wants to rewrite the story to make it fit a simpler arc. You were naive, they were monsters, you will never trust again. Stoicism refuses those easy edits. You write a more accurate version. I missed signs here. I saw clearly there. I held the line here. I folded there. I have added this rule. I have kept this generosity. You list what in you was targeted, your speed, your loyalty, your ambition, and you devise a way to keep each one without leaving the gate unmanned. Speed remains for emergencies, not for sales. Though for sales, loyalty remains to people and principles, not to demands that contradict them. Ambition remains directed at craft, not applause. Relationships damaged by manipulation require a careful re-entry, if re-entry is wise. The temptation is to litigate motives and archives. The Stoic takes a different path. He names the new terms and lives them. Going forward, I will need requests of this kind 2 days in advance. I am not able to respond the same day. I won't discuss this without a third person present. I can meet once a month. I won't be available for weekly debriefs. If the other person calls these terms cold, you refuse the label and keep the tone warm. Time will test whose claims match their conduct. You do not assign the test, you allow it. In families, repair often means grieving the version of the bond you can't have. The parent who will not stop tallying debts, the sibling who will not stop using crisis as a steering wheel. Grief does not require exile. It requires accurate placement. You move the person to a distance where love can breathe. The boundary is not punishment, it is an oxygen setting. You will be accused of indifference. You answer with a consistent kindness that does not change the policy. Over months, people stop pressing the soft places if the softness does not yield. If they do not, the boundary becomes a kindness for both of you. No one is forced to pretend. Workplaces that rely on manipulation can be changed, but not by sermons. You build new defaults that make the old games costly. You rotate high visibility tasks so flattery cannot monopolize access. You publish criteria so favoritism has less room to hide. You schedule pauses so fake emergencies miss their landing window. You keep credit flowing along the actual routes of effort and risk. Over time, people who prefer pressure will leave or adapt. The culture becomes less theatrical because the stage props were quietly removed, not because the actors were shamed. Technology adds its own asymmetries. Algorithms pay for outrage and urgency. They rarely reward calm correction in the moment. The Stoic adapts medium to aim. You do not argue under lights that turn truth into spectacle. You move the conversation to channels that permit nuanced calls, rooms, long-form notes, and you publish artifacts only when artifacts carry more light than heat. The point is not to hide, it is to choose the forum where persuasion can be honest and consent can be clean. If no such forum exists, your silence is not surrender, it is refusal to feed a machine with your peace. There is a deeper reason to practice repair. Cynicism will ask to lease the space that manipulation vacates. It will show you images of your dignity and whisper that the price is small. Just withdraw warmth and you'll never be hurt this way again. The Stoic declines the deal. He keeps goodwill on a leash named evidence. He lets trust expand and contract like a lung, depending on what the relationship breathes out. He remembers that most people are clumsy, not cruel, rushed, not predatory, fearful, not fated. This memory is not naivete, it is the oxygen that keeps your standards from becoming a cage. At the end of hard days, the evening review changes questions. Not only, where did I assent too quickly? But, where did I bear up under pressure without becoming sharp? Not only, where did I hold a boundary? But, where did I keep a bridge? You praise your own steadiness, so the pattern deepens. You name the cost, so the courage is honest. You sleep, not because everything is resolved, but because you did not trade your inner governance to survive the outer room. The paradox of high-stakes resistance is that the strongest posture often feels like gentleness from the inside. Your voice lowers, your sentences shorten, your requests are specific, your refusals are simple, your exits are clean. The outside may call it hardness. You're not obligated to correct the label. You are obligated to remain congruent, firm on content, warm toward people, accountable for your part, immune to theater. That congruence is what you carry into the next room, where power will again try to borrow your will. It is also what the good people in that room will recognize and breathe easier around. If manipulation is persuasion that steals consent, ethical influence is persuasion that strengthens it. The Stoic never abandons persuasion. Truth asks to be spoken, and the common good requires coordination. But he refuses the shortcuts that treat people as instruments. The test is simple to say and hard to practice. After you speak, the other person's capacity to choose should be clearer, not cloudier, freer, not cornered, dignified, not diminished. Influence becomes service when it leaves the will of the other more intact than it found it. Begin with a definition that separates cousins. Manipulation hides aims, inflates urgency, edits memory, and ties worth to compliance. Ethical influence does the inverse. It discloses aims, right-sizes time, records agreements, and respects worth regardless of outcome. If you need someone confused to say yes, you do not deserve their yes. Marcus would call this living in agreement with nature. The nature of rational beings is to assent to what they understand. Turn that into a scaffold you can carry into any room. 1. In the open. Say what you want and why. Yours, not a borrowed pretext. I'm proposing X because it advances Y. My interest is Z. You may fear that revealing stake weakens your position. The opposite is true with reasonable people. Transparency saves everyone the energy of guessing and disarms defensive theater. Even with unreasonable people, disclosure writes a record that ages well. Terms that can be checked. Replace fog with nouns and numbers. By Friday means by Friday 5 p. Local, handoff via this doc. Acceptance criteria as written here. Seneca's love of clarity was not pedantry, it was mercy. When terms are verifiable, consent becomes repeatable instead of performative. Options and reversibility. Ethical influence offers paths that keep dignity intact if the answer is no, and if the answer is yes, but needs revising later. We can pilot for 2 weeks. Opt out with 24 hours notice, no penalty. Revocability is the vaccine against buyer's remorse and the resentment that follows it. Proportionate tempo. You set time to match reality, not anxiety. I recommend deciding this week. If we push beyond that, these risks grow. If we rush before Wednesday, these errors become likely. Time becomes a parameter, not a weapon. Full cost visible. You name trade-offs instead of externalizing them onto the future. Saying yes here means delaying A and dropping B. If we're unwilling to pay that, we should decline. Stoic justice is practical. It allocates burden honestly. A clean exit. You bless the no. If this isn't right, I'll respect it and continue to be available for other work together. This is not sales technique, it is character. It removes the emotional invoice that turns the next conversation brittle. Carry that scaffold into concrete settings. You need a teammate to adopt a new process that will reduce outages but add overhead. Manipulative version. Everyone's already on board. Leadership expects this. If you're a team player, you'll comply. Ethical influence. I'm asking you to try the checklist for 2 weeks because our last 2 incidents were traceable to steps it covers. It adds 8 minutes per deploy. In return, we expect a 50-70% drop in rollbacks. If it doesn't deliver that, I'll withdraw the ask. We'll measure together. Here's the opt-out moment. You're not borrowing team as a cudgel, you're showing the math and protecting the bond with revocability. You want the boundary around late-night texts from a partner you love. Manipulative version. Only someone selfish would sleep through my messages. Ethical influence. I love hearing from you. I'm asking that we keep late-night messages for emergencies so I can protect sleep and be a kinder human in the day. If something can wait, let's put it in notes and talk at breakfast. If it can't, call twice and I'll wake. If this boundary hurts you, let's calibrate it together, but I'm committed to keeping it. You secure your standard and invite co-design of the practice. You believe your product helps, you also believe in sober buying. Manipulative version. Founder pricing ends at midnight. Only 3 slots left. Ethical influence. Here's the problem we solve, the outcomes we've delivered, and 3 cases where it wasn't a fit and we said no. Best outcomes come when buyers do X before signing. If you'd like, let's schedule a decision review next week. If either of us isn't convinced, we part friends. You trade performance for proof, urgency for a calendar, scarcity for suitability. You hope people support a cause. Manipulative version. If you don't post, you're complicit. Ethical influence. If you share our aim, here are 3 concrete actions with different time and risk levels. If you can't support now, consider reading this brief and sending 1 question you'd want answered before you act. You expand the menu and keep dignity intact for dissenters. Notice the through line. You keep the relationship safe even as you prosecute the truth. That safety is built from tone as much as structure. A warm voice with firm content communicates that you're not trying to annex the other's will. You are inviting them to stand with you on ground you're willing to map, measure, and adjust. What about when the other side is already using pressure and you still want to influence toward a better outcome? Stoicism teaches contrary motion. You refuse to mirror the tactic. If they escalate, you lower your voice. If they compress time, you slow the clock with a reason and a date. If they hide costs, you put them on the table. If they make it personal, you return to process. You do not yield core facts to the comfort of harmony, and you do not yield humanity to the thrill of victory. There is also inward ethical influence, the way you persuade yourself. Self-manipulation breaks the same rules, hidden aims, I'll just check once, false urgency, if I don't answer now, I'll be forgotten, cooked books, I'll make up the sleep later. The Stoic counters with the same scaffold, name the true aim, right-size the timeline, state the cost, offer a reversible trial, and bless the no when it protects your standard. I want to feel needed. I'll meet that need by finishing this draft, not by doom scrolling. You influence yourself toward what is good in terms you can live with tomorrow. Teaching these practices without weaponizing them requires one more principle, reciprocity of audit. If you ask others to accept your rules, delays, documentation, opt-outs, you accept theirs in return. If your partner needs a second set of eyes, you cooperate. If your teammate asks you to write agreements, you do it. If your buyer needs time, you bless it. Influence becomes mutual maintenance of shared standards rather than one person's clever system imposed on the rest. You will still fail. You will catch yourself sweetening the numbers, leaning on a deadline you know is padded, letting flattery leak into an ask because it feels efficient. The repair is simple and costly. You retract in the open. I oversold the risk. Here is the accurate range. I pushed too fast. Let's reset the timeline. That compliment belonged in a thank you, not in this request. Each retraction sands down the part of you that wants the world to bend so you don't have to ask cleanly. Over time, the asks become easier precisely because they're honest. Finally, remember the Stoic reason for all of this, not merely to avoid guilt or to look noble, but to live among rational beings as one of them, to appeal to their capacity for choice and to honor it even when it opposes yours. Ethical influence, repeated, creates a climate where consent is normal, clarity is routine, and boundaries are not accusations, but the geometry of trust. You will lose some fast wins this way. You will gain allies who sleep well and answer your calls for years. In the last part, we'll compress the whole series into a pocket compact, A short, portable code, questions, scripts, and habits you can carry into any room to remain warm-hearted and unmanipulable at once. This final step gathers everything into a single posture you can carry without pockets full of rules. Think of it as a way of moving, slow enough to see, warm enough to be trusted, firm enough to be free. Begin before the room. The person who decides well under heat has already decided some things in the cool. You don't improvise your pace every time a clock appears. You already live by one that fits the size of your life. Big purchases and heavy commitments sleep at least one night. Consequential choices get one outside eye. Agreements are captured in short notes, so memory can't turn fog into history. None of this is dramatic. It's closer to hygiene than heroism. Like washing your hands, it's not a response to a crisis. It's what keeps many crises from starting. When you enter a conversation, notice the air. Manipulation rarely arrives as a command. It arrives as climate. A clock you didn't set begins to tick. A favor you didn't price becomes a bill. Clarity shrinks when you ask for it. The circle narrows until one voice wants to be the only voice. You don't need to accuse anyone of anything. You only need to behave as if you see what you see. Slow your breath, widen the circle, translate a claim into plain speech. You're asking me to do this by tomorrow for this reason. Say it gently. It's a window opening. Fresh air enters. Exaggeration loses its gravity in oxygen. Language is where warmth and edge meet. It is possible to protect the bond and the boundary in the same sentence. You can say, "I care about you, I'm not doing that," without sarcasm, and the sentence will feel like an adult standing up. You can say, "Thank you," and still know and honor the gift without renting your will. You can refuse a borrowed clock with, "I want to give this the care it deserves. I'll decide at noon tomorrow," and most decent people will feel the respect inside the delay. These are not tricks, they are habits of honest regard. When it's your turn to persuade, step into the light. Say what you want and why, and let your stake be visible. Name the cost as well as the benefit and point to what will have to move to make room. Size the time to the thing, not the anxiety. Offer a small, reversible trial so the other can breathe while they try. Bless the no out loud. In doing so, you turn influence from a contest into a shared inquiry. Is this the right thing? In this shape, at this time? You will lose some fast wins this way. You will gain relationships that do not sour in the aftertaste. The body remains the hinge. When the room accelerates, your breath lengthens. When you feel the urge to lean forward and perform, you lean back a fraction and let your eyes soften. You speak one notch slower than the room. Calm is an argument all by itself. People who cannot hear reason will often still feel tempo. The nervous system signs most contracts. Give yours a pen you trust. Structures help because they let character show without strain. Write down what you decide. Put visible clocks on decisions that like to borrow midnight. Invite a second set of eyes as a matter of course. Give projects and relationships clean exits so coercion loses its business model. Reward prevention, not theater. None of this turns life into a bunker. It turns rooms into places where people can say yes without hating themselves later. There will be rooms, of course, where niceness is only a decor and pressure is the architecture. Power is real. Pretending otherwise is not Stoicism. It is costume. In those rooms, policy language protects you better than please. Looping in counsel is my practice on matters this size, stops being a preference and becomes a rail. You document dryly so the facts survive your future mood. You escalate by pointing to standards, not villains. You leave when you must, with a tidy archive and a clean tone, taking your fire with you instead of lighting the house to prove a point. The people after you will thank you for the path you left, not for the smoke you made. Repair matters as much as resistance. After a hard encounter, The mind will try to make the story simpler than it was. They were monsters, you were naive, never again. Simplicity feels safe. It also makes you smaller. Write a truer sentence. I missed this sign. I saw that one. Here I held the line. There I folded. This rule I will add. This generosity I will keep. Courage grows on that soil. So does tenderness. You do not need to sour to stay safe. Teach what you practice without turning it into a weapon. Ask others for the same clarity you offer. Honor their clocks when they are real. Accept their second set of eyes on your proposals. Let their no be blessed when it comes honestly. Reciprocity keeps standards from becoming control. The point was never to outmaneuver everyone. It was to make clean consent normal in the circles you touch. Keep a few small rituals to prevent drift. At day's end, ask where your body decided before your mind and where clarity protected warmth. Praise something you want repeated tomorrow. Adjust something without calling yourself names. Once a week, look at a refusal you sent and rewrite it the way you wish you had said it. Cleaner, kinder, just as firm. Then read it aloud so your mouth learns. From time to time, audit your rules, which protected both you and the relationship, which turned into hammers, which you used as a shield to avoid a hard kindness. Sand down what got sharp. Retire what became theater. If you want a single thread to hold when the room gets loud, let it be this. Keep your tone human and your terms clear. The world confuses warmth with weakness and clarity with cruelty. They are, in fact, allies. A warm voice carrying precise words is a rare sound. People relax when they hear it. The manipulators find few places to grip. The honest find ground to stand on with you. And you, having refused both numbness and haste, leave the room with the same mind you entered it with. You will still miss. You will rush when you meant to pause. You will pay a bill you didn't owe. You will discover that a rule you loved has turned into a way to avoid telling the truth kindly. This is not failure, it is the ordinary curriculum. Tomorrow you will breathe once before answering, translate one claim into plain speech, name one cost out loud, and choose one decision on your time instead of on a borrowed clock. You will say, I care about you, I'm not doing that, and feel how the sentence keeps both of you human. You will remember that the goal was never to become unbreakable, only congruent, the same person before pressure, during it, and after it. Carry that congruence quietly. It does not need slogans. It is felt in the way your pace slows a room, in the way your notes keep memory honest, in the way your no leaves dignity in place, and your yes arrives when you said it would. In such a life, manipulation becomes unprofitable and cynicism unnecessary. You guard your assent and keep your heart open. That is enough. Now, if any part of this message has been helpful to you, leave us your like and comment, helping the algorithm recommend it to someone who needs it at this time. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss new videos. And if you look through the videos we've already uploaded, you're sure to find something to take with you. Have a good day.